Okay, so hi Satish, we're going to talk about the learning strategies and designing of the learning strategies for Industry 4.0. And I think why it becomes very important and relevant today is with the advent of technology, with the metaverse coming in, with 5G on cards, with quantum computing on the side, I think we're moving into exciting times. And it's an apt topic. It's also an apt topic because I think CHROs, L&D heads will have to now customize extensively the learning and development programs and also look at fast scalability. I think that's what we should look at today. So over to you.
Yes, thanks, Niket. This is certainly an interesting topic for today's times. Before we get into how things have transitioned, let's look at how the traditional corporate learning methodology was in the heydays.
So I remember when I took on to the learning and development industry, when I exited from my corporate life, which is approximately 2 decades ago now, it was, I would say, quite primitive. We were talking about skills, we're talking about elementary leadership work, certain outdoor training programs, which still tend to happen. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't happen. Gradually, the industry moved into interventions, very serious work. People looked at pre and post processing of learning. They were also showing serious concern in terms of measurements. How do you measure the transfer of learning? What is the ROI? Then obviously we moved into a space where coaching moved in big time. And in India, typically the coaching community is growing very big. Specialized coaches came in. A lot of people who, kind of quit their corporate careers became excellent coaches. From there on, the e-learning came in. And the e-learning, obviously, there were various portals that came up with e-learning. But I think during pandemic, I mean, obviously, Industry 4.0 started off when computers came in. But I think during pandemic, people kind of took on to technology. Learning started happening on Zoom, on Teams, various other platforms. And now that the pandemic is kind of in control, I'm seeing that very serious learning interventions are coming. And these interventions are primarily very complex human-centric interventions, which require extensive designing. And they also require instant scalability across the organization. So I think we're looking at massive transformation happening. We're not only now restricting ourselves only to face-to-face and e-learning portals. We're talking about metaverse, we're talking about 5G, we're talking about OTT. OTT is the next big thing in learning and development. And serious content development, which will be on subscription. Podcasts have moved big time. Audio learning programs have gone big time. And obviously on Atyasa Online, which is the e-portal of ours, we've got an exhaustive list of programs, the 40-hour programs. And we've also looked at audio because learning on the go, ubiquitous learning, that's becoming very important now. And before we really deep dive into it, I think one thing that I definitely want to mention is that in Industry 4.0, designing of learning programs will have to be democratized. People, members of the organization must be permitted to choose the learning programs that they want to. And therefore, in my research paper, I've also written that we are now moving into vertical development. Earlier, it was horizontal development, where competency frameworks were there. Organization would decide what learning to be done. But now we're moving into uniquely designed trainings for each person. And therefore, it becomes very, very important that technology plays a crucial role in that. I think that's where we can begin our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the VUCA world today, and like it's been said, one size does not fit all. So there has to be enough opportunity in the learning methodologies to be customized for each individual or a group of individuals with similar level of understanding or experience. So in the VUCA world, post the pandemic, where learning is becoming very, very important, and that's one of the key aspects for the L&D managers and the CHROs. What has changed in the learning methodologies, or what should ideally change in the learning methodologies?
Look, when we're talking about vertical development,
Yeah.
we are now looking at each person. Therefore, psychometrics play
Mhm.
a very important role.
Okay.
Now the psychometric tools, whether it is MBTI or it's Savile or DISC or whichever tool you want to take, no problem at all. You'll have to identify what is it that that person requires to become effective.
Okay.
Because in this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, which is my area of research, that's my PhD all about, and I'm talking about building resilient organizations in the VUCA world. The resilience is all about people resilience, process resilience, and structure resilience. The process and structure resilience can be brought in, there's no problem. But what about the people resilience? And when we talk about people resilience, we're not restricting ourselves only in emotional intelligence. We are also talking about the fact that people need to have those capabilities built into them by which they can confront these complex situations. Because the past approaches, the past learning, the past experiences, they're not going to hold any ground in the
Okay.
complex situations that arise now. And every situation is going to be unique. And therefore, in my research, I have quoted that the every individual's personality and the behavioral traits must express themselves to totality so that they become absolutely effective in the area of work. In this world of VUCA, if we do not focus on individual requirements, whether it is colleges, universities, corporate,
Yeah.
we're not going to make it. So we're moving away from the paradigm of horizontal development where there is a kind of a custom program which runs across the organization. We're
Mhm.
now moving into very, very customized and tailored programs, which are for individuals uniquely. And
Okay.
that is a principal message I would give to all the CHROs and L&D heads.
Okay. So that brings me to the next question about the Pygmalion effect or the Rosenthal effect. How does this impact the absorption, retention, and transfer of learning?
So Pygmalion is eternal. I mean, Pygmalion started off with this Greek mythology where there was this sculptor who carves out a beautiful lady from a rock and prays to the Lord, let there be life, and the life was put in. Then George Bernard Shaw picked it up and created a play around it. Then Hollywood took it up, and there was this movie called My Fair Lady, where there's Professor Higgins working with the flower girl. This was picked up in management. And when it was picked up in management, Rosenthal effect typically was that students were picked up at random, and the faculty was informed that they had some special abilities, and the faculty believed in it, and the students
Okay.
actually demonstrated some amazing results. And therefore, what got identified in the research was that if the faculty believes that he or she is creating content or is delivering a learning program to exceptional people, you actually create that effect. So in Industry 4.0, any faculty who's developing content, any organization's internal L&D team that's developing content, and when you're delivering content, do not believe that we're dealing with a bunch of people who can't handle the complex situations. They
Okay.
can. They can.
Mhm.
In fact, what's also happening is a lot of people that I'm talking to today for the interventions that I'm designing, a lot of them are coming and saying, we're not sure whether our people are ready. And I always tell them, don't do that. Just believe that they're ready, build a content around it. And the Rosenthal effect or the Pygmalion effect will always play up. And should you believe
Okay.
they're not good to go into the programs, even that outcome will emerge as a reality because you created it.
Okay.
Sometimes it's also called the self-fulfilling prophecy.
Okay.
But stock markets operate on self-fulfilling prophecies. When people believe the markets will go up, they go up. When people believe markets will not go up, they don't go up. The economy operates on Pygmalion effect. So why can't learning programs happen only on Pygmalion effect?
Certainly. So when we talk about the VUCA and the current and the future situations, what is it that the organizations need to do to be recognized or to be known as learning organizations?
Design-centric.
Okay.
I mean, one thing is coming out very clear in my VUCA research.
Okay.
Design as a skill has existed since long time. I think even a caveman was a great designer.
Mm-hmm.
He designed the tools by which he
Mm-hmm.
hunted.
Okay.
They designed the farming tools. Then in the 1700th century, we obviously had mechanisms which operated on steam. Then we moved into
Mm-hmm.
electricity.
Mm-hmm.
Then we moved into basic memory chips and computers. And now we moved into sophisticated technology.
Okay.
Design has always been there. However, the difference now is that design was thought about as a skill set for the top management. But design now in the VUCA world, as I see in my research, design at various intensities and frequencies is applicable across the pyramid now. Therefore, one is organizations will have to go design centric. That means your people will have to be design centric. Your
Yeah.
processes and your systems will be based on design thinking, which will give you prototypes that will engage with the environment. And these prototypes will be created by human beings. And diversity plays a very important role in that, whether it's gender, whether it's age, whether it's experience, whether it's the background. So diversity of experience is very critical. So if we are able to do designs for structures, for processes, and do work designs, and work designs typically move beyond job descriptions and job specifications.
Mm-hmm.
Job specifications are more to do with qualifications. Job descriptions would move into these qualifications plus the environment that the person is operating in. But work design is a thought as to how do we make that person successful in that particular area, and also identifying whether the person's personality and whether the person's behavioral traits are in line with the work design.
Okay.
And that's where the success starts. So psychometrics are going to play a very critical role. We're going to have learning processes playing a critical role. We're going to be seeing a lot of scientific approach towards monitoring how people are responding. Are they able to accomplish their goals? If they're not able to accomplish their goals, you got to have a sensitive radar system within the organization, which immediately brings up a correction. And therefore, democratization of learning is very important because people will have to decide how they will become successful in the work area.
Okay. So you touched upon psychometrics, and I completely agree with you that personality type classification or analysis is definitely needed. Can you touch upon how the personality type influences the individual's learning style?
Oh, well, there's a second research paper that I have given now where
Okay.
I've looked at the traits as well as the personality types.
Mm-hmm.
We did psychometric analysis of 41 leaders who were managing global assignments
Mm-hmm.
and 87 people who went through MBTI.
Okay.
So I was looking at in the research, I was looking at one, what is the trait tool throwing up? And we use Savile there. So on 108 facets, we researched these people. And whatever came out of that particular report, we attempted to correlate it with the MBTI personality type and the out of preference behaviors. And what were the recommendations that came up in the MBTI tool as far as the learning and development was concerned. Now, obviously, there are certain facets that people have to develop which are a part of their personality. And we saw a correlation there, but we didn't stop there. We also went to the third stage where we conducted appreciative inquiries to check whether the finding of the trait tool, which is a behavioral tool, and the personality tool, which was MBTI, whatever findings we had, how are they correlating with the appreciative inquiry within the organization on the post-pandemic VUCA situation. And
Mm-hmm.
very interestingly, in the research paper, I have mentioned that I saw a complete correlation and design thinking, psychometrics, creation of prototypes becomes a live mechanism for people to learn,
Mm-hmm.
acquire the skills that they need to acquire to become successful.
Okay.
In that paper, I've also identified different skill sets that are now relevant. So scientific method of decision making is emerging very, very critical. Therefore,
Okay.
critical thinking, design thinking, emotional intelligence is coming in big time. Technology savviness is coming big time. Authenticity. Are you aligned with your passion? Is the work aligned to your passion? Is it aligned to
Mm-hmm.
your talents? That's coming up big time. So there are these areas that I've identified. I mean, I'll be very happy to engage with people to really, give the detailing of what the research looks like. But fortunately, since I'm a researcher and I'm a scientist, I started anticipating it while the pandemic set in. And we already had created technology-enabled learning systems on Atyasa Online, where the MOOC, the exhaustive MOOCs of 40 hours and the audio courses, they're actually aligned completely to the requirements that the future leaders need. And manager as a coach and leader as a coach are also emerging as very critical competencies. So I think CHROs, L&D heads will have to look at unique things that people need and also look at the post-pandemic VUCA environment and look at those competencies which are required to become successful in the complex area that we are now in. That combination will work very well. Horizontal development is obsolete.
Okay.
Standard programs cannot get you an outcome to manage all the problems that VUCA world creates. But VUCA world, as I've said in my research, is if you're able to crack where is it that you can become successful, if you're able to hack that off, VUCA will get you immense orbit shift. It'll also get you the business profitability. So I always say this, if you've got the right prototype, you got your top line, you got your bottom line, and if you got your cash flows going. So all that works very well.
So you talked about Carl Jung, you talked about MBTI personality traits. There are two very strong personality traits that come out. One being an extroverted, one being the other being the introverted, right? The learning styles of these two individual personality traits are very different.
Yes.
Could you touch upon what is the personality trait and how the learning style is?
Well, I wrote about that in the paper. I said extroverted people definitely like to engage in group discussions, conversations. Introverted people would love to read up. They enjoy e-learning. They enjoy learning by their own self, whether it is corporates, whether it is colleges, whether it's universities. And I'm glad universities today are focusing on e-learning. I think we have to, the blend is the most powerful thing. The misconception that extroverts are more successful than introverts or the other way around, not true. Everybody becomes successful. But what came out in our research was that organizations are full of STs, the sensing and the thinking people. Okay. Therefore, there's a massive data orientation and there's a massive analytical and logical orientation, which is good, which is good. But in the VUCA world, you also need some people who are NTs, intuitive, who can work on frameworks, models, and also logical and analytical. Now, this cannot happen because you're born with a particular personality. And that's where design thinking comes in. Design thinking across all the 16 types of MBTI will give those skill sets in form of the structured process of empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test and scale. When people master this, they master design. And when they master design, any of these 16 personalities can become successful in the post-pandemic world. And pandemics historically have brought about tremendous shift in terms of innovations, in terms of behaviors, in terms of the way the market operates, organizations operate. And therefore, I mean, my research is very, very clear. It's becoming very evident. Psychometrics, design thinking, the ability to manage change through tools, the ability to decode the events, monitor the events with criticality, all that is becoming very, very crucial. And then design the learning strategies around that. But again, you don't have time. So you got to scale up these learnings fast within the organization. And therefore, you'll have to go beyond humans. You'll have to get into technology.
Yes. So I see that you're emphasizing on learning and development, the speed, the cadence that they need to maintain. This department, L&D, is emerging to be a critical differentiator with increasing intensity in the VUCA times.
Yeah.
How does applying design thinking to this make things easier or make things robust as a process for L&D?
So design thinking typically is about complex problem solving.
Yes, it is.
Now, if it's about complex problem solving, what's happening? Typically, in a complex problem solving, if you have the skill, that's when you can approach a particular problem, which otherwise is very difficult to handle.
Yeah.
The normal approach that we would take. Design thinking gives you the process to address the complex problem, get a solution, test it, and testing is important. Therefore, learning and development teams can use design thinking to design training programs and interventions with a combination of human intervention, technology intervention, real-time, on-the-job skill acquisition, knowledge acquisition through learning, through peer coaching, through mentoring. So you're able to create a complete design of a prototype, and that prototype design can actually enable your learning strategies and help you scale it. I don't think in the VUCA world now, one manager, one leader, or one faculty can do justice. You'll have to invest in people from different domains, because it's all about diversity of experience now. It's all about how do you get all the knowledge that you need to really deal with the complex situation. And as you go up the pyramid, I'm also saying this, that the learning is now transferring to a large extent on the top of the pyramid, which didn't happen before.
Okay. And that's very true, because across the organization is where the L&D has to look at opportunities to create learning opportunities for people at various levels. And the organization, therefore, will truly be a learning organization only then. Right?
Yeah, but the difference now in VUCA is the top line, the bottom line, and the cash flow is the responsibility now of the C-level.
Okay.
Because you're dealing with very complex situations.
Certainly.
And if you're dealing with these complex situations, the senior leadership, getting design oriented, acquiring those skill sets, the knowledge, creating structures, creating processes, helping and mentoring and coaching in creation of prototypes that can engage with the environment. When they bring that experience in, and when they also learn the new technologies and the new skill sets, that's when organizations will move. It's not about discounts. It's not about cost reductions. It's not about efficiency anymore. It's about how do you enter the vacuum, and then how do you make it big there?
Okay. So multiple times in our discussion, you've touched upon the use and adoption of technology. So I'm going to name a few. It would be very nice if you could enlighten the audience on some of the technique tools that I'm talking about here, about virtual reality, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, machine learning, robotics. How do they enhance individualized learning?
Well, let's take it one by one.
Sure.
So let's look at a basic e-learning portal.
Certainly.
Now, if you really look at a very basic learning portal, it could have certain presentations.
Okay.
People read up the presentation. It could have certain manuals. People read up the manuals. They're done. At the most, there could be a quiz.
Okay.
Right? But that's not effective. You need somebody to teach you, right? Therefore, videos, audio podcasts.
Okay.
So videos, audio podcasts, manuals, blogs, toolkits, case studies.
Okay.
When you combine all that on a digital platform, quizzes, make them tough. Like on Atyasa Online, I was very clear, 70% should be passing.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I thought about doing that is if every program is 40 hours, obviously people must spend time on it.
Yes.
They must take the learning, imbibe it at work. It should be rigorous. So now, obviously, MOOCs are moving into, you got those portals available, and you can actually build in all the content that I talked about. But we are also now moving into augmented reality,
Yeah.
virtual reality. Now, in terms of virtual reality, obviously, it's going to be more like, giving a very naive example could be that, a child is wanting to know how a dinosaur looks like. And it says D for dinosaur in the book, and the dinosaur pops out. And I can actually experience what the dinosaur looks like. Possibly, it's also going to be activation of senses. So that's going to be a real-time understanding that goes on along with learning. It will certainly happen when you're learning manufacturing, when you're learning anything on the job. You could actually move through simulations. Gaming is another big area that's coming up in learning, and gaming can move into virtual reality. Augmented reality obviously starts moving into a domain where you're learning through live simulated environments. You're there in the environment. So, like for instance, if I'm learning to drive a car or any vehicle, and if I'm in an augmented reality mode, I actually get a feeling that I'm driving a particular automobile which is really on the road, and I can actually create those scenarios of challenge around me. But machine learning is going to take us to the next level, where machine learning, and I'll talk about robotization also.
Sure.
I'll talk about how the avatars are going to work. So talking about machine learning, obviously machine will learn while it interacts with the human being. It'll have the ability to create its own learning. All the platforms, learning platforms, are going to be connected all over the world through the internet. Internet of Things is big, and each of the machine is learning by itself. And therefore, what happens is people who are going through an experience, a technology-based learning experience, uh, they're live with all the new content that comes up as the machine learns. Now, when we talk about moving into a space like metaverse, in metaverse, you could actually, I could actually have my avatar, which is interacting with people in a classroom, which is a global classroom.
Right.
And I may not be physically present there. It could be my electronic version, a digital version that's present there. So that's the next frontier that we're talking about. Right now, obviously, we're beaming into multiple countries through Zoom or through such platforms. But then metaverse is where it's immersive. You're getting in there. You're getting into space. People are also coming in. You're going to be having transcripts available. You're going to be having recordings available. So it's again on the go. You can learn anytime you want. But we'll have to work on the mindset that you don't need people to be physically present. The digital versions are talking to each other. With 5G and quantum computing, the computing power is going to increase so much that now with artificial intelligence, blockchains, all that coming in, and this whole idea of democratization of everything on the internet is going to change the face of the learning industry completely. We are also, like I said, we're talking about OTT.
Yeah.
OTT could get into immersive. OTT can move into a space where your learning programs are moving into an area of machine learning too. And I've also written in the research paper. It may seem sci-fi, but people can actually acknowledge, and they could actually understand that we're also looking at the best of the faculties worldwide. They create a legacy after they leave the planet. A version of theirs, available, which is able to still teach people. And that is a reality that we're getting into. Faculties will become immortal. So
Certainly.
massive developments, massive development. I was surprised when I was conducting this research as to what is going to happen when technology and knowledge merge together, and a new definition of learning processes and systems will emerge.
Yep. So I would like you to touch upon, like you said in your article, the emotional contagion and proto-organizing in human interaction dynamics. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So what is happening is, obviously this was a work of Professor Richard Boyatzis, and I was very impressed with that work.
Okay.
And I felt that his body of work should come into my research paper.
Okay.
So it's like this. I mean, when we are looking at sorting a particular task,
Okay.
we are operating through our amygdala, which is our survival part of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, we're not very effective.
Okay.
That's what Richard Boyatzis talks about. But however, if we were to engage with something which is purposeful for us, something that is in line with our talents, that's something which is in line with what is it that we would always be fascinated to do. And design thinking enables you to do that.
Okay.
You start operating in a mode called the default mode network, where all the lobes fire big time.
Okay.
And I've tried this in my experimentation of learning programs where I've engaged people into the area and given them certain interesting problems to solve based on what is it that they enjoy doing. Like, for instance, in design thinking workshops and war rooms, we selected people who are specifically interested in that area.
Okay.
And therefore, the game became exciting for them. That's when you start operating in an emotional structure which is extremely enabling and positive. And that starts creating a ripple effect across all the people. And I think in the VUCA world, purposeful engagement on challenges is very, very critical, extremely critical. And I love Richard Boyatzis' works. I think his work is phenomenal in terms of the way he's brought about the emotional aspect into the learning also.
Okay. So in our discussion today, we've covered a lot of variety of aspects. I don't know if L&D and CHR would find this overwhelming. In the VUCA world is overwhelming for sure. But when we talk about integrating technology, when we talk about integrating personality types, and then designing learning outcomes and the learning methodology to meet those outcomes, it seems pretty challenging for sure. And somebody really has to apply their mind in building a comprehensive learning strategy for the current and the future, isn't it?
Yes. Get researchers, get scientists
to help you,
partners.
To help them overcome the challenges and build a tool that helps.
Because post-pandemic, VUCA world, I mean, VUCA has been there since the time when the Cold War got over.
Yeah.
Right. The story of VUCA is that when the Cold War got over, before the Cold War got over, there were only two enemies. But when the Cold War got over, you were exposed to anybody, anywhere. That's when the concept of VUCA came in. If you're looking at VUCA, what's happening is, anything can happen anytime. We're living in an absolute unpredictable space.
True.
And if we were to do that, obviously, best of the people are going to enable you. Therefore, your quality of people, your quality of partners across the value chain, they become extremely important. You cannot have transactional relationships anymore. And therefore, what can be done is you invite experts from different areas and kind of bring in their thoughts and build it up.
I think that's critical to use experts these days because they come from a very niche research area or a niche learning, which can help organizations because they do not have the wherewithal to conduct such kind of research and put it to use in their organization.
Well, there's no choice, Satish. There's no choice. I mean, I'm interrupting. There's no choice. Organizations will have to build their research teams.
Or should they depend on the external experts?
Both.
Because it's not one expert that you need. You need experts in multiple areas.
External experts are going to become very expensive by the day. Obviously, because if you're bringing in people who can solve complex problems, ultimately, like we say in management sciences, monetization is directly proportional to the problem you solve. So obviously, bringing in these partners is going to bring in tremendous value. There is no problem there. but you can't engage them over a long period of time because they're going to be expensive. And therefore, it makes sense to also build a team of analysts and researchers within the organization. Organizations, as I see in my research, will definitely need scientists, management scientists,
Okay.
within the company. And that too shared pool of management scientists, which are across the globe. If you're an M&E, you can't localize it to one country. And they will have to participate along with the external partners. That's when success will happen.
I mean, it's interesting when you talk about businesses having to engage or build a talent pool of researchers and analysts to be able to draw by interacting with across the spectrum of the organization. What is it that needs to be changed? How it needs to be changed to make it more resilient, more effective going forward. That's very interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
And I guess CHROs to that extent have to change their approach towards looking at these professionals and getting them on board within the organization rather than hiring, like you rightly said, because this is going to be long term and external is going to work very expensive.
Well, I see the change. I see the change. I see
Okay.
definitely that there is an acceptance that now specialist help is required.
Okay.
I think when people are definitely at least engaging with me, on numerous occasions, they've said, we understand that now we need specialized people to come in. And since the problems are becoming more complex and they're hurting the bottom lines and the top lines directly, because everything is so volatile, people will certainly look at each other's help. So the mindsets are changing. Now the mindset to move towards technology and to democratize learning through technology.
Yeah.
That is one area where CHROs will have to consciously enable it within the organization, because they're going to get the resistance also within the organization when they democratize learning. I mean, come on, when you go and tell your members in the organization, here is the portal, you pick and choose what you want to learn. It's a new paradigm there. And one thing that we're doing on Atyasa Online, what are we saying? We're saying, don't get into subscription with us. Pick up whichever course you want, sign up with us, pick up whichever course you want, let people decide what course they want to take, and it's available.
Okay.
And then you back it up with different technologies, different content. So that makes transfer of learning possible. It also makes it interesting.
So one piece to develop people, what we are talking about learning in the industry 4.0 or learning strategies, is to let each individual develop their own skills.
Yeah.
What is your comment on what is your thought on coaching? Because we are talking about borderless world. 21st century needs handholding and coaching of professionals to evolve them to be next level leaders. Is that possible to do on using technology, not having to sit face to face?
Absolutely. I've been doing it for the last so many years. Coach people, either face to face or online. Back it up with the e-learning MOOC. Augment it with live projects, which they do along with the team. So they practice those skill sets. They practice.
And you start with the profiling of the personality as a beginning?
I mean, as a scientist, I would never touch anything unless I have a very clear understanding of what the situation is. And therefore, validity and reliability of tools is very critical. Hunches don't work anymore in VUCA now. So you profile, based on that, you determine the goals. And then once you determine the goal, then the coaching moves along with technology. And therefore, it becomes scalable.
Okay, look, I remember you having
the idea is very simple. In the VUCA world, can you make coaching short? You don't have the luxury of 9-month and 1-year coaching anymore.
Oh, yes, of course.
Because the world changes every 60 minutes, 60 days. Sorry. The world changes every 60 days. So you got to have coaching sessions, which is all about making that person effective immediately. And if you want to do that, short coaching sessions, maybe 1 or 2, 3 interactions with the coach, technology backing you up, immense content available, a project live, 360-degree happening to check whether the behavioral changes and modifications are happening, and you're done. Then the next trouble comes. And when the next trouble comes, the next intervention with the coach, which can be shorter. And then the learning with the democratized way can happen on its own.
So if an organization needs to do this kind of coaching, personalized coaching for, let's say, the C-1 levels, let's say 10 such professionals, what kind of time frame would they need to invest in getting this off the ground and see
3
the
months.
results? When you say 60 days,
3 months.
3 months.
3 months, the project should be over.
Okay, and that will be the proof.
People have to start at C. I see a lot of C-level folks talking to me with absolute enthusiasm. They want to engage into coaching. People are hungry to learn.
Okay. And so to identify how and what should be my coaching approach in my learning organization as I build it, the approach to be taken is using design thinking, engaging their employees, talking to them, interviewing them, building prototypes, taking from the ideas that they generate,
and the work
testing
design.
it. Of course. So simultaneously, they need to also study the work designs and rework how it should be as we move along. So these two things have to move parallelly to be able to build a learning strategy for the future.
Absolutely.
Is that how it is, Nikhil?
Absolutely. Look, in the VUCA world, if a leader is unable to solve a problem along with the team, and if the problems are going to remain open, they're going to hurt real bad.
Certainly.
And if they're going to hurt real bad, attritions are going to be real bad. If organizations are having a noise or stress on the top line, the cash flow, and the bottom line, and the attritions, you've got to act immediately. Because if there's no hope in a complex situation of uncertainty, if the organization and the leaders can't create a hope, you're going to lose people.
Okay.
So my suggestion would be C-level and C-1 level maximum engagement on coaching and learning. And across the pyramid, obviously you democratize, you do interventions, but design thinking brings people together. A lot of conversation happens, a lot of team building happens, a lot of learning happens. Unique learning can also happen by the side. So design thinking projects as learning and development scalable projects becomes a great idea.
Yeah, I do agree with you when you talk about
Satish, learning development teams should sit down in design thinking sessions and design what kind of a learning process they would want to initiate in the organization.
Agreed. Because like we said, the experience, the roles that people play in organization are so huge and so wide that they need to design learning for each individual or maybe for a group of individuals. Yes. That's how it is, because like I said in the earlier discussion, one size does not fit all. So one person leaves learning capability, let him learn at his own pace.
Also, what CHROs will have to do is they will have to do an event-based study. Now, there's a new paper that I'm writing on event-based study. On an event-based study, what they'll have to do is they'll have to observe every event that is creating a stress within the organization. They do a scientific analysis of the event. Either they do it internally or they have external folks coming in to do it, and immediately commence a learning activity, which will de-stress it. So these CHROs and the L&D heads will have to monitor every event within the organization. And what I'm saying right now is very critical in the VUCA world. You cannot arrive at a conclusion unless you test it scientifically, because these are wicked problems. They can backfire. So I would recommend, look at a scenario, analyze it as an event, build up what is it that is required to be developed uniquely within each person based on the work design and across the team, get a prototype of design up and move. That's how it goes. And rapidly put into place.
Scale it up.
Yes. Otherwise, what will happen is you haven't solved one complex problem and the other complex problem is facing you. And that could create a domino effect.
Certainly. Certainly. So Niket, that brings me to the end of our episode today. I think there was a lot of loaded information, loaded guidance on how CHROs and the L&D folks need to move forward. I'm sure none of the C-levels should miss this particular episode of ours to make sure that they are aligning themselves to build the organization which is in the VUCA world going to be successful for the future and a long time to come, to reduce attrition and to have a workforce that is really motivated and aligned to achieve the company's goals.
And very importantly, I think people must appreciate this, that if you want to succeed in VUCA, knowledge is the only thing that's going to help you.
Certainly.
Outdated stuff, and the stuff is going to get outdated so fast. I mean, every 60 days, you're looking at obsolescence happening. You can imagine the amount of effort that would be required to keep the teams up to speed. And I think L&D folks have a lot of work on hand now.
Yes, and we will help them. We will help them. This is just the first episode of Industry 4.0 learning strategies.
Certainly. And I think the kind of rapid research work that I'm doing right now,
yeah,
there will be so much of information available with us that I'm certain, I think my whole idea is to build a community of researchers alongside, like I keep saying, have them on LinkedIn, have them on different social platforms, and there could be a good exchange of information that can keep happening. And that's what we're looking at. So obviously my newsletter on the business resilience is doing extremely well. We've got some fantastic subscribers coming at a very rapid pace. So resilience is something that people are definitely looking at. My showcase on design thinking with Niket Karasgi, a lot of followers coming in, a lot of content moving there. So we're doing our bit. And I leave it to the people who are on the call today to engage with us and see how this journey can be taken ahead.
Yes, certainly, Niket. And the following episode that we will have will be a continuation of the Industry 4.0 learning strategies. Until then, thank you very much for your time today. Very insightful discussions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.